Hey guys, so today we are answering a subscriber question, and the question in question was, Frederick, how is Sass typically used? So let's get into it. Well, Sass is a compilation step for CSS basically. It is a compile or transpile, whichever you want to call it, that allows you to add features to CSS that you don't normally have, and then the compiler or transpiler will convert that information or these features that you don't actually have into just CSS. Now, there are quite a few features in Sass, like mixins, functions, variables, and so forth and so forth. And it's a very good, like, there are a few flavors of this, Sass, SCSS, depending on how modern you're going to be, and less post CSS. There's probably a few more that I'm forgetting, but there are, like, you should know that it is fairly standard practice today to have some type of enrichment to your CSS. Now, this is usually the case, but I'd like to just state something, and that is that I do believe that we have there is a little bit of a danger with Sass today, and the danger that I've seen so far is that the people who go really, really hard on I'm not, well, I don't have a better word for it than complicated solutions. Actually, I think that using Sass, all the features of Sass is actually a big mistake. And just let me hear me out. So something that I've seen quite often is people going for creating different functions that either do something fairly complicated or they add in mixins for absolutely everything and so forth. And in my world, that usually ends with that just pretty much turning into legacy or being something that bloats out your CSS. Because remember, whatever you put, like, there's no magic to it. It's just that Sass knows how to express what you want to express through CSS. So it's simply going to take whatever you write, compile that into CSS, and output something on the other side. And odds are that whatever is coming out on the other side is going to be a lot more bloated than what you would have gotten if you wrote it yourself. But I will also argue that I think that there is not. I think fewer people would write sophisticated CSS or Sass if they had to do it themselves. And this is one of those things where I think that we have a little bit too much here. There's slightly too much rope, and you're going to hang yourself with it unless you're careful. A good rule of thumb, I would say, for using these sorts of things is to keep it as minimalistic as possible. I will even go one further, and I will say today that I used to, and I still do, believe that one of the biggest things that Sass gave us back in the day was variables. Variables is an extremely useful thing to have when you're doing CSS development. But today we actually do have that natively supported in the browser, so it's not as the value is a little bit, it's not super anymore, like it's not as clear anymore. And when I do this sort of development, one of the things that I personally enjoy is to have a entry point file into my Sass or my CSS and import all of the different CSS modules, not CSS modules, like modules, like different files that contain the different information that I need, and simply compile that. That's also into one big file. It's still just me writing just plain old CSS with a few variables, but I can use that to improve my own workflow. But I try to avoid functions and all this stuff as much as possible. I may use a mix in here and there just to do something like screen widths, to have something to easily express media queries as an example, but try to keep it as simple as possible, because this is just me talking, but in my experience, people who go really, really hard into the more advanced features usually may themselves understand how all of this works, but it's very common for them to just basically create all these weird design systems or helper methods and so forth. And on a big project, it usually ends with just them using it for a little while, and then it just is, after that it's basically legacy. So what I want you to take away from this is that Sass is typically used to enrich CSS. That's the purpose of it. It allows you to express more sophisticated things such as functions and mixins and variables and all that stuff. It used to be the case that CSS couldn't do all of this. It still can't do all the things that Sass can do. And that is why people opted into it, because they wanted to express more sophisticated things and have a more convenient work experience when working with CSS. But I raise my finger and I warn you, I don't think that you should opt into all of these more sophisticated features. I think that you should keep it very minimalistic, because I've so far found for the needs of most companies, it's good enough to simply have access to a very small amount of mixins or variables, things of this nature. It's very rare that you need to create like a super function that takes in variables and does some type of magic with CSS. And remember that the compiler, depending on how you write your CSS, you might actually end up with more CSS than if you wrote it yourself, because the compiler is going to do the best thing it can to output something useful, but you may actually find out that you end up with a very bloated CSS because you are opting into these more advanced features. Have a great day.